Welcome to Dungeon Academics. My name is Thomas and I'm your instructor. In this video, I'd like to talk about teamwork in roleplay games. More specifically, how games mechanically reward working together. I'm going to take it as true that most roleplay games are team games. While there are some games designed for just one player without a dungeon master, and some people are in solo campaigns where it's one person and a dungeon master, the majority of roleplay experiences are in a team, and working together is an important part of the game. I mean, there's even an adage, never split the party. That's the first rule of Dungeons and Dragons, the second being never dump Constitution. And we talk about not splitting the party for multiple reasons. One, it's easier for a small sub-party to be wiped out, but it also reduces the opportunity for teamwork. And I think solving problems as a team is a core part of the gameplay experience. So, how do different roleplay games handle teamwork? Now, there are some roleplay games that have no mechanic for this whatsoever. If there is a task to be completed, each player will attempt it individually, and if any of them pass, then the whole group can be considered to have passed. I don't think this is very nice. It doesn't encourage cooperation. It's just everyone does their own thing. Dungeons and Dragons, on the other hand, handles teamwork in a very simple way. If it is appropriate, the Dungeon Master will allow a player to re-roll their skill check if they have assistance from another player. The appropriateness of this comes down to the Dungeon Master. If you have a scholar trying to decipher a text and another player wants to offer assistance, then it is up to the Dungeon Master to determine whether that assistance is appropriate enough to gain advantage. If it is a barely literate barbarian who's trying to decipher some ancient text, perhaps advantage is not appropriate. On the other hand, if it's an ancient text about giants and the barely literate barbarian is a path of the giant barbarian, then perhaps it is appropriate. This is up to the dungeon master and the players to negotiate between themselves. Either way, the mechanic is very simple. You gain advantage, which will give you a reroll on your d20 dice, unless there is something already stopping that by giving you disadvantage. This mechanic is represented fairly similarly in other roleplay games, where you can reroll a skill check if you have someone helping you. But I feel there are a couple of setbacks to this, a couple of disadvantages to this system. Firstly, it takes no consideration of the competency of the person helping you. If the person helping you is also an expert in that field, their help is just as valuable as someone who is only just able to give meaningful assistance. And there's no advantage to having three people try the same thing. At the moment, there is no formal mechanic in Dungeons & Dragons for group skill checks. And perhaps this is an oversight or just something that never got round to being done. I'm fairly sure there are some third-party books that handle group skill checks well, though I'm not as familiar with all of those. I'd love to see if you've come across any nice mechanics for group skill checks that would be appropriate for things like this, for a group working together to finish a single task, like searching a room or deciphering an ancient text. I have talked about my own roleplay system that I'm developing in several videos. The FRAP system stands for Flip, Remove, Add Plaques. Plaques being little cards like this. You have challenge cards that you can flip to succeed, and you have little abilities that you can add in by adding these plaques. They're currently printed on paper, but let's not worry about that. As a very brief reminder of how a skill check would work in the FRAP system, you have 4 different characteristics to look at on your character sheet. Your overall character level, You have your ability and hyper ability. Your hyper ability is a sort of enhanced or super ability, and the relevant skill level. And all of these are measured from 0 to 12. Now, the minimum you will ever have is an ability score of 1 and a player character level of 1. So you might not have any hyper ability and the relevant ability. You might have no skill in that ability, but you still have a player level of 1 and a character level of 1. And the way the system works is your hyper ability always is associated with a plaque that you can add in to a skill challenge that gives you some bonus. But of the other three, the highest number tells you how many dice you skip along this sort of dice collection that you have. These are just placeholder dice. The game will probably use custom dice. So the largest number tells you how many dice you skip. The next number tells you how many dice you take. And the third number, the smallest one, tells you how many rerolls you get. So for the lowest possible level character, for the most unqualified character with a ability score of 1 and a character level of 1, it means they skip 1 dice and take 1 dice. And if you had player level 3 and skill 3 and ability score 3, you'd take 3 dice, you'd skip 3 dice, you'd take 3 dice, and you'd get 3 rerolls. Easy peasy. How does working together work? Well, this follows a very simple mechanic. If a person or people assisting you have a characteristic that's higher than your one, you can just swap it. So perhaps your character has a higher raw intelligence score, but they have a higher linguistic score. Well, what you can do is you can just say, well, we'll use your linguistic score and my intelligence score. And then a third character comes in to help, and they've focused their progression so that they're at a higher character level. It doesn't mean they have better abilities. They've just focused it in a certain way. So we'll use their character level and your intelligence score and the other player's linguistic score. So you pick the characteristics that are best. If it comes to the case that someone wants to help and they don't have a score that's better than yours, well, what you can do is you can pick a score where they're equal and just add 1 to it. So if you have 2 characters who are intelligence 4 working together, then you can just roll it as if you had intelligence 5. That may slightly adjust the order in which things are done, but if they're the same, you add 1. But what happens if someone wants to help and they don't have any ability score that's higher? I'd still like to have a mechanism for this. So let's go back to this thing. I said the highest number tells you how many dice you skip, and the next number tells you how many dice you take. Well, if someone has no ability score that's equal to or higher than yours already, it means you just go back 1 step and take an extra dice. So let's say if you skipped 5 dice, so you'd actually be starting on this black one here and then took some. If someone else wants to help and they don't have any ability level that's high, you just go back and say, actually, I'm going to start at this dice. I'll take this dice as well. So it's the smallest possible bonus while still being a bonus. But this means that everyone gets to join in. You can do group skill checks really easily. The mechanic for a group skill check is exactly the same as the assistance mechanic. Everyone can join in and everyone can assist. If you have more characters who are competent in that area, you will get a bigger bonus. But still, everyone can join in. And even if it's the case that the barbarian says, okay, well, I'll hold the lamp steady while everyone reads the book, they still get to participate. Now, I think this mechanism is quite good. It's quite fun. Is there a way that I can bleed this back into Dungeons and Dragons? Well, perhaps there is. What if you've got 2 people doing a skill check together and one of them has a higher proficiency bonus, but the other has a higher ability score? Shouldn't it be the case that working together, you can combine both of those? I think so. I think it might be interesting if we slightly take away the prevalence of advantage as a mechanic and have a system where if you have two people doing a skill check together, if one of them has a better ability score modifier, the other has a better proficiency modifier, you pick the best one of each to use. And we restrict advantage to being things like environmental reasons for being advantage or character-based reasons for having advantage. This could make backgrounds even more useful. If your character has a background in linguistics, then they would be able to offer advantage on linguistics checks. And it makes having a diverse background more important, and it makes the background a bigger part of what the character can do. It feels at the moment in Dungeons & Dragons that backgrounds give you a couple of skill proficiencies and then are never talked about after your character creation. I'm trying to avoid that as much as possible with my own characters and make it part of their story, but it's not always easy. So, is there a way to improve working together and teamwork in Dungeons & Dragons? Absolutely there is. And I think that could be something that could be improved upon in the next edition, whenever that may be. The mechanic now, it feels like Wizards of the Coast have gone for mechanical simplicity over anything else. And that's not always a bad thing. But I think with a bit of care and thought, you can have something that's both mechanically simple while still being rich, flavourful and fun to play. And with a bit of thought, perhaps we can come up with a better idea for the next edition. Anyway, those are my thoughts on working together. I'd love to hear yours. And as always, enjoy your next game, whatever it may be.